Hello world, and welcome to our new series, Metaquarr. Remember in my Crucible video, I mentioned the definitions of aspect and crucible? No? Well, go watch it. I think it did a good job. Now, I started this channel because I love to learn, and because I want to help people understand and learn things as well. The nature of this work means I get to learn new things as I go along. Sometimes that knowledge will reshape my hypotheses about this game. And sometimes all of these different aspects come together. Now, the reason that I bring up the aspects in Crucible is that I kind of honed in on 3 aspects of the Crucible. During my subsequent research, I dove into the topic a little bit more and actually found another aspect of the Crucible, or rather, another aspect that I think I should talk about. If you're familiar at all with a YouTuber called Zeostorm, you've probably come across his mushroom theory. Now, I'm not going to go into everything involved with this theory or the videos he's made. Link will be in the description. Definitely go check it out. Generally, he put forth this theory that the Erd Tree is some form of mushroom, either actually or symbolically. Now, while I find that perspective to be interesting and can see where it fits into the overall theming of the game, I wasn't fully sold on the concept of the Erd Tree being some sort of fungus. You're gonna want to watch this whole video because I found evidence of Zeostorm's theory. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to lean heavily on Wikipedia, not as a primary source, but as a useful tool. I've seen plenty of primary sources on this topic, and I'll have links as always to vids and sites to help solidify the concept. Part 1. How Ordovis and Siluria prove mushroom theory. The Tarnished Archaeologist has already provided the basis for Ordovis and Siluria being references to Ordovices and Silures, areas of early Britain on the southwest of the island of Wales. The people there coming into contact with Romans who migrated northwest. But they serve as more than just a reference to those people. They're also a reference to another ancient land, one that existed before the Romans, before anyone existed at all. The Paleozoic era is a geological era of one of the earliest time periods of our planet, at least from our perspective. It happened somewhere around 542 to 250 million years ago, as in for that span of time, give or take a few million years. Within that era are distinct periods of time that geologists have identified over the years by studying fossils. The second distinct period of the Paleozoic era was named the Ordovician period. I'm going to recommend a vid by Paleoanalysis on this time period for a better explanation, but here goes. This period went through many early forms of life that were mostly found within the ocean. A supercontinent landmass was located in the southern hemisphere, at times centering over the South Pole. This left most of the northern hemisphere as ocean. It's believed that a lot of life would have formed around those early landmasses, but not exclusively. Early sea life was diverse and constantly, from a large timescale perspective, changing, consisting of invertebrates, but also the earliest vertebrates. The first fish would be found in this period, for example. The end of the Ordovician period would be marked, however, by a mass extinction event, the second largest of the big 5 of extinction events in Earth's history. Before we get to that next bit, though, these periods were broken down into smaller divisions known as stages or epochs, or epochs, depending on how anybody would actually pronounce that. Of particular note, there was a middle upper stage of the Ordovician period known as the Darwinian stage. That's right. This dude is associated with the primordial soup that was our planet's earliest forms of life. Why? Well, narratively, and this may be relevant to my hypothesis, this stage was marked by the emergence of the first spores of plant life, but also another form of life called Ungulograptis austrodentatus. Wow, that was a rough one. A form of the species Graptolite. Now, this animal species is characterized as a colonial species, described as sea butterflies, and pteropod snails. They were a well-preserved species, and they are compared to their modern equivalents. Fossils have been found across a wide distribution across the planet, and their name comes from a town of Darrawell in the county of Grant, Victoria, where Thomas Sargent Hall had studied the graptolite rocks of Victoria when he became famous for them. At the end of the Ordovician comes the Ordovician-Silurian mass extinction event that I mentioned before. That's right. Even in geology, they insist that the man came first. But at least in general terms, the Silurian period was seen as one of recovery from the Ordovician period's massive death. Bony fish made their first appearance here, and more animals began to spend time on land. As noted in another video by Paleoanalysis, this is where the first forests would start to form, made of fungi. Yeah, that's right. The first trees were mushrooms, giant trees of fungi of the Silurian period, as in narratively what she's standing in front of in the deep root depths. Now, this is where my interest in the shrooms end, but I gotta say, I wasn't expecting to come across this. I'm still not completely sold on the idea that the Erd tree itself is a mushroom, but the underlying theme of them and rot, etc., is parallel to our real-world example of the primordial crucible, as in the primordial soup that our planet evolved from. In addition to that, on the screen right now, you're going to be seeing a picture of one of these fossils that were of these giant mushroom tree things that were discovered in the side of a rock wall. So how does that tie in with Siluria's tree in Deeproot? Well, that one's going to be a few corspectives away, but I promise I've found the tie-in. If geology is any indication, well, we can't walk before we learn to crawl, or we just kind of get eaten or obliterated by climate change or radiation from space or meteors or any other number of mass extinction events that would, kill us off as a species. Anyway, there's still several more interweaving parts to this information. Part 2. You're not going to believe this. First, these early plant and animal species left fossils that have been found to this day in places like the lakes of New York State. So that's for any of those people that are like, what does this have to do with America? Second, just like the Darwinian stage from the Ordovician, there's a specific stage of the Silurian that caught my eye, the Landovery epoch. That's right. These ugly squid monsters you find everywhere in the lands between, their reproductive organs share the same name as the first stage of the Silurian period. When you take a step back and you go a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole, this makes narrative sense. These beaked monsters have all these crazy tentacles, just like the Ordovician sea life from earlier, and some would have and did survive into the Silurian period. They are constantly found in stagnant lakes and on the shores of beaches within the game, and they are surrounded by their offspring that would be furthering their species. They are incredibly durable and also the stuff of nightmares, as they seem to be an amalgamation of several early forms of life from our real world. Side note, you find one in ruin-strewn precipice right next to a snake god sword, indicating these are interwoven with Tanith's Night and, in general, the Volcano Manor. The Landovery epic is named after a town in Wales, the community of Carmarthenshire. I probably butchered that. And you may notice the double L there in the name. The name itself means church enclosure, amid the waters. This first picture that shows up on Wiki kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? You have the ruins of a castle in the background, and then this very familiar statue standing in front of it. It's a stainless steel statue of a lord with a shield that has an equally familiar emblem on the coat of arms. I admit this is closer to a rhyme, but notice how these things are all kind of coming together in a way. The lord that this statue was made from, apparently this is a statue that was erected in 2001, again from a similar kind of design contest that was held to put there by the town, where the lord in question was a lord who served under King Henry IV, who apparently led him on a wild goose chase, chasing some of the Welsh enemies of the king. And then the king found out that he was leading him on this wild goose chase and had him executed in a very public manner and had his remains preserved and sent to several Welsh towns just as kind of like a really sick power move. I mean, wild goose chases would never be something that you would associate with Elden Ring. The town hall is of interest too. Part 3, an announcement. All of this just by examining some additional aspects of just one set of enemies and characters in this game. And I'll tell you, there's more that relates to them, but that's enough for now. I hope this has been informative, and I wanted to end it by making an announcement. Just like with the Primordial Crucible and the Crucible Knights, there are so many additional aspects to all of the different things in the lands between. So I'd like to invite you to take a journey through the game with me, with these perspectives in mind. I'll be doing a playthrough, which will fill many goals of mine, but ultimately will act as a supplement to the deep dive and other videos that I want to make, as there's so much depth that I don't really hear about much in other videos. Speaking of which, I'm planning on doing a set of more objective videos. Keep an eye out, as it'll be interesting to see what happens when you take objectivity to its logical conclusion. But for now, if you enjoyed this and are excited to see more, then please hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you'll know when I release the playthrough videos. Thank you for watching the Metaquarr.